Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 26 of Nostalgia Talk. I really need to stop being surprised as to how many episodes we've had of this show, but wow, it's just amazing. And my guest that I have right now can't believe it either. And for any of the listeners who are wondering, no, your eyes are not playing tricks on you. The thumbnail was correct. I have with me the puppeteer who plays one of Sesame Street's biggest stars. Let's give a big welcome to Leslie Carrara-Rudolph.
Hello! How are you today?
I am well, and you?
I'm good. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, and I think a lot of the listeners are really excited. They've been excited about this one for a long time.
Really? Oh, that's nice.
Now, for anyone who's not aware, Leslie is the puppeteer for Abby Cadabby, the fairy on Sesame Street, as well as the voice of Velvet the Curtain from the Elmo the Musical segment.
Oh, I'm so glad you dropped me in, James. I'm so forgotten, and I've been hanging around forever waiting to make an appearance. It's just like they lowered the curtain, they raised me, and never lowered me again. It's very frustrating. Thanks for mentioning me.
Well,
All right, go on.
Welcome back, Velvet. Besides Sesame Street, she also played Spamela Hamderson on Muppets Tonight, which is a parody of a fellow Canadian.
From the band Pigs Watch. Hi, James.
Hey, this is just like meeting a celebrity right now.
She left. She went to the beach. She's looking for sunscreen.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's raining here in Nova Scotia.
I don't think Spamela has ever been out of a bikini. She just thinks that, she can get a tan from anything.
And also was Edie the zebra on Animal Jam.
Yes. That was so much fun.
And since she was on Animal Jam, I can safely say the co-star of last weekend's guest, Ricky Boyd.
Oh my gosh, I love Ricky. In fact, in our Ricky, I have some artwork. Of course, people can't see it, but in our I have a little newsletter for Lolly, Fun with Leslie and Lolly, and monthly we send out like a newsletter that has eye candy, ear candy, podcasts, videos we've done. It has a writing prompt. It has artwork. It has all kinds of things. And next month we're going to send out one of Ricky's drawings that he did as Lolly. It's a mashup of Lolly dressed in a Glank outfit. So it's because we're going to feature Paul because it's well, depending on when you're hearing this, it's Earth Day. So upcycled instruments and stuff. But I have a lot of Ricky Boyd's artwork around.
Wow.
Yeah, he was the best as Waffle. He's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I used to love that show when I was younger. It was cool having Ricky here because we got to go back in time to Animal Jam because that's my childhood. I was 4 when that was around.
It's such a great show. I love that show because I don't know what I haven't listened to Ricky's episode yet, but we shot like an episode a day. We did 30 pages, and in the morning we would shoot all of the puppet stuff, and the songs and everything, which were amazing. The songs were one of my favorite songs. Do you remember I Am the Rain Falling on a Lion's Mane?
Wow, now I just made myself look like a fool. I don't remember that one.
I am the rain. That was one of my favorite songs. A monkey named Matt went for a walk in the wood. He's jumping and he's walking because he's feeling so good. It was Bounce. All these really cool different songs that we did. So we would shoot the video of our characters doing that, and then we'd go to lunch. And after lunch, it was a live show. So we had a full-on live audience. I would take Edie out into the area and do audience warm-up with the kids. And then the kids would come out and dance. And we were on ground. They were pulling us on Fernie pads, trying to get as low as we could to the kids. And it was awesome. It was awesome. And we shot that at Disney World.
Right.
Yeah. So lunchtimes we'd sneak out and see Muppets 3D.
Nice. Have you ever had Disney World's turkey legs?
Yeah, they're too tough for me.
Really? I love them.
Oh, well, I don't know if I'm from, I'm a Northern California girl, so Disneyland is my Disneyland. They have corn dogs that they don't have at Disney World, which is pretty good. And they put caramel in with their marshmallow, their chocolate covered marshmallows.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Nice. And I should also bring up your original character, Lolly Lardpop. And if anyone is interested in seeing Lolly Lardpop in action, just click the corner of the video for all kinds of Lolly videos.
Oh, are you gonna feature my Milano cookie video and my candy dance?
Are they on the YouTube channel for
Oh
Lolly?
yeah. Oh yeah. We're adding a lot more videos, some from our brunches as well. Thanks, Lolly. She's very good at plugging herself.
Ah.
I just entered the film festival. Okay,
Nice.
Yes, as a film student, they have a 48-hour puppet film festival for the LA Puppet Guild. And so we entered it. They give you a theme, an object, and an action. And then we just did a little stop motion thing. So
nice. Now, before I get into the interview, I just have a few little quick things I'd like to say. First of all, I want to acknowledge something kind of serious. This weekend marks 1 year since the worst tragedy that has happened probably in recent years in Canadian history. Last year, around the same time last year, my province was victim of the worst mass shooting in Canada.
Oh my gosh.
And I just want to acknowledge that for the families of the victims. Yeah, I know it's probably a bit of a hard weekend for you, but stay strong. And also, before I begin, I want to tell the listeners a little story. Leslie and I have actually met before, but this time people are actually going to hear it. As many of you probably know, I got to interview Sesame Street vocal music director Paul Rudolph last month, and I knew when I was doing my research for it that him and Leslie were married, but I have this policy of not bringing up the personal lives of my guests because then you have the whole question of how do you know that? How were you aware of that? And that just kind of would make me look like an idiot. So I decided to avoid talking about it unless Paul did. And sure enough, he brought it up, and and he said, you need to interview my wife. And I was like, yes, I'd love to do that. And so I finished recording, and he says, hey, hang on a second. I'm going to go get my wife. And at that point, I was like, is this really happening? Because of course I knew who Leslie was. So he brings her out, and he says, Leslie, this is James. He's like a walking encyclopedia of all things Muppets.
I know. I'm sure you know more than I do.
A lot of guests have who have been on Muppets have confirmed that. All right, so let's get retro. Should that be my new catchphrase, I wonder, for a show called Nostalgia Talk?
I don't know. I think you should try it out for a while. I'll say it. I'll help you spread that.
Okay. Well, so first of all, how did you become interested in puppeteering?
This is first of all, I also want to acknowledge what you brought up earlier because my heart just stopped, thinking about the tragedy and things that happen in people's lives and how it affects us on so many different levels. So my heart and soul goes out to that. And it also in an interesting way ties into what how I got led to puppetry. So for me, I'm a storyteller. So I love different ways of reaching kids. Originally I was going to be, they used to call them special ed teachers, but my degree at San Francisco State is child development through the arts. So I'm the youngest of a family. I was a surprise to my family. So I'm a lot younger than my siblings. And I spent a lot of time in the backyard, and my grandpa and grandma lived with us. So we had an intergenerational family. My dad wanted to be an animator for Disney. So he ended up being an art teacher. So we had very creative weekends, and, he would do art shows. We were always painting. There were art students over. My brothers and sisters had, friends over. So we had a lot of people in and out of our home, and it was open to our neighborhoods and stuff. And my very first puppet experience was, ironically, my grandpa, I had a fairy garden all the time, so I'd be out in the backyard because I'm super hyper. I'm ADHD, TNT, explosive attention deficit disorder, I always say. And I was always in my own little world and making little gnome homes and seeing the world in such a creative way. And I remember my grandpa, my very first puppet was a snapdragon. So I don't know if you know those flowers, but if you pinch the ends of the flower of a snapdragon, it talks to you.
Oh,
And it's like you can make a little, it's like nature's puppet. And I remember being young and that was like, oh my gosh, that's a puppet. And I started looking at a very young age at the world around me in a creative way, because I already had these tools from my dad and my siblings and everybody. Um, so that was like my very first puppet, and I started making things around me come to life in that way and tell stories, and I would create characters because my dad would, and I would start cartooning at a young age. So I'd like draw a really cool character, man, with long hair and stuff. Whoa, dude. And sometimes I'd stay in the cartoon form, and sometimes I'd dress up like the character and kind of figure that out. And sometimes they'd make a puppet or see what would make it to life. So for me, puppetry was just another way to bring a character to life. So does that make sense? I don't really know. I didn't like pursue puppetry, but at puppetry were just ways that I could reach kids and go through things in life. And we had a lot happen in our lives growing up, and I remember being able to escape into a character in order to deal with all the things that were going on around me. Does that make sense? It's kind of a deep way, but it was mostly, it happened just being inspired by the world around me and my natural teachers in my family and friends. And
nice.
and then I also, of course, grew up loving the Muppets, but I never dreamed that, and Sesame Street was like, because of the way my brain was thinking, when I saw Sesame Street, I felt like I gotta live there. That's what it looks like inside my head. There's monsters and characters and create, and I also am minorly dyslexic, and so it words sometimes crash in my head, and I learn visually and differently. And I just remember when Sesame Street came out, I was like, oh my gosh, this this is this this feels right in my heart and my world. And so I think that's how I fell down the rabbit hole into puppetry and cartooning and theater and education.
Nice.
Deep.
It's a great, that is deep. Yeah, but that's a great story. So how did you get involved with the Muppets?
Wow. Let me see. Well, first of all, as a fan, I collected frogs. I collected frogs because the frog was the first cartoon I was ever drew on my own. It's just a football with eyes, and I used to draw frogs everywhere. And then me and my buddy Wayno, we would draw frogs together, and then we both started collecting frogs, and then we fell in love with Kermit and Robin, and we would dork out and go to the Muppets and watch all that stuff. And so that was like the love for the Muppets there. But again, it didn't occur to me because back in the day, you never saw videos. There weren't like things out there that show how it was done. We were just fans. Oh gosh. Well, because I was into characters and theater, I ended up at a young age getting involved in theater. Like at age 16, I did my first community theater, which was Godspell. And then from that, I auditioned for a theater company called Fantasy Forum Actors Ensemble, and I was there with them for 13 years. And they would hire me to they knew I had a knack for characters. So I was a dog. I was Pinocchio. They would put me in all these crazy costumes, and I would do a lot of physical comedy, and they would cast me as these off the charts crazy characters. And then locally, and then I was still involved with after school programs. And then a theater said, Leslie, have you ever done a show for adults? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you do all these characters. And I was doing I was doing birthday parties and doing my own family shows. Have you ever done written a show for adults? And we're going to give you a night. So I wrote a show called Life in Other People's Shoes. And what I would do is I had shoes all over the stage. And then I would sometimes I would cartoon a character and then go into the shoes and assume their identity. So if I had a little pair of flip-flops, that's where I got Granny Dot.
And she was based on the water fitness ladies that Leslie used to work for at the YMCA. She taught a hinges and twinges class, and then she didn't even write the material. She just used to listen to whatever we said in the locker room.
So I started touring with that show. And this is, James, it's a long story. I'm trying to thumbnail it for you, but I was doing that show, Life in Other People's Shoes. And I was also in a show called Beach Blanket Babylon in San Francisco. Someone from Disney came and Disney World and said, we're looking for a comedy act to go on at Disney World at this club called Comedy Warehouse before on Pleasure Island. And we think that you would be a good person to do that. Well, turns out it was an improv club. I took the job. I went to Florida. I was at the Adventures Club and I was doing all these characters. I know this sounds kind of roundabout, but I was still doing shows and theater and performing live. And then I ended up auditioning to be audience warm up for the Mickey Mouse Club reboot.
Nice.
Showing my age there. And they ended up casting me as Carol Frady in the Frady Bunch with Christine Aguilera. I can't even say her name. She was
Aguilera.
Thank you. And then also I was in a liquid meat commercial with Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears. So crazy.
It's funny.
Anyway,
It looks like I wore the perfect shirt for the occasion.
It's such a weird,
Cool.
You asked me how I got involved with the Muppets. This is how crazy everything was, and so anyway, a long story short, there were writers, a long story longer, there were writers for the Mickey Mouse Club that said, why aren't you in Los Angeles pursuing things like, SNL and stuff like that? And if you're ever in California, please look us up. So I went to visit my best friend, Wendy Wayno, who my Muppet gal. And I looked up these two writers and they said, we'd like to manage you, if you're interested. We feel like we can get you out there as a female comedian and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. And so what ended up happening is I ended up being in California, came out and visited for a while, and I had a meeting and they were able to get me an HBO Workspace show, which is kind of like, it's Comedy Central has it now, but they have this theater that they offer to writers and comedians to put up shows, and then they invite people to come see. So I was doing that, and someone from the Muppets or somebody came and said they're having auditions for female comedians who can do character voices and sing in character. And in my show, I was doing Life in Other People's Shoes. So I was doing Madame Velveeta, and I was doing all these Loretta Sanborn again, doing these crazy things. And I was like, okay. So I went to a cattle call. I did have one initial meeting with Kirk Thatcher and Dick Basucci, where my friend Sandy Fox kind of got me in because she knew they were seeing female comedians, but I think it was too crazy because my puppets up until that time was all outreach, because I was still working with kids at risk based on my degree at San Francisco State. I was still active in community. So my puppets were slippers and socks and found objects and crazy things, nothing fancy. And I think they went like, I'm not too sure she's got it. So I went to the cattle call, and that's where they were seeing 10 people every half hour for 2 days on the weekend.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? This is just crazy. I'd written in my journal, I wish that I could find a place where I belonged, and in my head, I was like Sesame Street or the Muppets. It seems like the way I think I would fit in there, but I don't know how I'd ever get there. So when this audition came along, I thought like, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's angels or whatever, but this is happening. So I went to the audition, and you had to have a monologue and a song, and that's it. And Bill Beretta was at the audition. Brian Yanish was on camera. I mentioned him because he's a wonderful friend and illustrator. So he was there. He was a witness. And my monologue was The Wizard of Oz, which I do The Wizard of Oz in 2 minutes. It's how I used to get kids. Whenever I was at Disney World and I need to get kids to listen, I was a storyteller. I would say, I can't find, oh gosh, my book, I can't find the book. I'm just going to tell you this story from memory. And I would do a story, or whenever I was busking in San Francisco, I would just open with that. So I did my Wizard of Oz. And then when I was done, I said, and I'm going to sing Somewhere That's Green. He's like, no, sit down and talk to me. And then Bill asked me, like, why are you like this? And I said, I just love characters. I love them so much, and then I put on a puppet. I counted to 10. They didn't have a monitor. They just had his lip sync. And then there was another callback. There was 2 more callbacks. The second callback, I met Brian Henson. I thought I was going to pass out, and Martin Baker. I was like,
from meeting Brian Henson?
I was just like,
I probably would too.
I just couldn't believe this was happening to me. I just, the odds were so, it literally, I know it sounds corny when you follow your heart. I've literally followed my heart my whole life. And so and my dad, was such a hard worker, and everybody were always working, that we would take job to job, just keep working. Amazing. And so, then I had another callback, and at that last callback, there was just 2 of us, and with Bill, and he gave us I've told this story before. So he had a monitor set up, and he was teaching us television style puppetry, which I had no idea. And it's crazy because left is right and right is left. Everything's backwards above your head. And we had a monitor. He taught us monitor from 10 to 1. And then there was a break for lunch, and they went to lunch, but I didn't have any money. Ooh. So I was like, oh no, you go to lunch. So I stayed while they were at lunch. He said, you can practice monitor. I practiced and I practiced and I practiced. And when they came back from lunch, there was another 2 to 4. So we had about 5 hours total. And I did the best I could. And so the next thing I know, they called me and they said, we're going to hire you. And I showed up on this, at a reading. I mean, it was just every day. Oh my gosh, James, every day I thought, they're going to fire me. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to learn everything I can before they fire me. That was every day on set. I'm just going to watch everybody. Bill said, if we have time, we're going to help you. This is Leslie, help her. And I'm looking at Frank Oz, Dave Goles, Steve Whitner, Kevin Clash, Bill Beretta, Brian Henson. I'm like, Jerry Nelson. And me, I was like, what am I doing here? I'm going to be sick, so I just, it was a master class every single day. I just showed up and I just learned as much as I could. Wow. And I practiced in between. I had a monitor set up in my dressing room, and I just practiced. And I brought whatever puppets I could find. I'd bring to my dressing room, and I'd write little character descriptions for them and do voices, and then just study at the feet of the greats.
Nice. Wow. A lot of,
there you go.
You have a lot of perseverance, I got to say. That's amazing.
I think because I probably was resilient because I'd been through so many other roller coaster things in life, that to me, this was just the biggest surprise gift ever. So even if I was only invited to the party for 3 seconds, I was going to grab a party favor and leave. No, I was just I knew that I knew that every moment was a gift. And so, and if I was a better trained puppeteer, maybe I might have taken things personally, but I'm it's a miracle that I'm here. So, I just kept swimming.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. So after your audition for Muppets Tonight, the first big role that you had was one I mentioned in the intro, the one and only Spamela Hamderson. Was that one that you auditioned for, or was it here, this is a new character for you to do?
I think they had Spamela Hamderson in mind originally, and they occurred to them that none of the guys could do an authentic female voice. because
Yeah.
Miss Piggy's, so they knew that like, we're going to have some real female voices on this show,
Mhm.
And I think because Spamela was like that. So when Spamela first came on, I didn't have the puppeteering chops to do a a, a job like my skill set was nowhere near what it was. So when Spamela was first on, and Casey the lactose intolerant cow and all these things, I would sit off to the side, and Kevin Clash would puppeteer the puppet for the first part of the season until I got good enough, and he would catch my voice. So I would be doing Spamela, and it wasn't like, we were probably like almost even 2/3 the way, and they'd give me incidental characters. But then one time, Kevin saw me practicing with her, and he goes, well, you put her on, I'm like, okay. And then I did her, and he's like, Drew Massey was my buddy, and he's like, help Leslie, I'm going, she's got this. And I was like, oh my God, you're leaving me. So it was like I'm going to say 2/3 probably, when I started just doing her myself,
Nice.
and they gave me incidental characters, like little bits here and there, yeah, it was, the whole thing was like putting down a roll bar and going,
I bet. So when I had Paul on here, something that he brought up was the great Jerry Nelson. And if any of you listeners know me personally, then you probably know who Jerry Nelson is, because I don't shut my mouth about the Muppets. But for those of you who don't know, Jerry Nelson was one of the original Muppet performers. He was on Sesame Street, The Count, Harry Monster, Amazing Mumford, Sherlock, Hemlock, Grover's Customer, Mr. Johnson. And for the Muppets franchise, he was Floyd, Robin, Lou Zealand, Uncle Deadly. Oh God, just an amazing list of characters that he had. So Paul had mentioned that Jerry was a big mentor to you. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned from him?
yes, Jerry was life-changing to me, because you can imagine being in that situation, and with those greats, I was awestruck every day. And but I was also a comedian and entertainer, so I was used to being able to, like, you know find humor in everything, even your most terrifying and scary situations. So I was learning, so I had a positive attitude in the midst of all this overwhelming. And when I had a dressing room, so there was a dressing room, and then there was a bathroom, and there was Jerry's dressing room, and all the Muppet performers had dressing rooms. So I was living with my buddy Wayno, and I would commute in super early to beat the traffic in Los Angeles, and I get early into my dressing room, and Jerry would come into his, and every morning he would play his guitar and sing, and I would just lean up against a bathroom wall, and I'd listen to him, and he just, like, it was great. And so we'd come out of the dressing room like, hi, that was a great song, and blah blah blah, and we talk. And Jerry was like, I think he liked to sing. I'm like, yeah, I sang with a big band and blah blah, I was a singer at the time too as well. And he just kind of took me under his cape, his bat wing, and
Under the Count's cape.
yes. And I think also too, it would have been the age of his daughter. And so I think he liked my energy. And I pick angel cards all the time. It's just something I do. And I would pick an angel card. I'm like, do you want one? He goes, yeah. So I'd have an angel card for the day. But Jerry would pick me to be as an assist. Because you imagine you have all these guys who are awesome, and then you have all these other male puppeteers that have been working for a long time, and they pick right hands. It's like kickball or in sports. I was the last picked all the time. It's like, who's gonna have this person? But Jerry always picked me.
Nice.
And so I always would right hand him. I learned from him. He got to know me, as he'd always say, what are you doing this weekend? I'm like, well, I have a gig, I'm doing this. Like, he got to know me. Like, he'd ask about things that I was writing, or my characters and stuff, and we had that love. So he just, I felt the other guys, everybody was great. It's just they had so much happening. They were lead players, they didn't have time to see this little weird thing that was brought in, so and they were great too. They were all positive and supportive too, but just Jerry was life-changing. I felt like I was glued to him, and he's just a genius. He was a genius.
And he also, one thing I noticed about him in terms of puppeteering and voice is that he had a certain way of doing it. Like, for example, every one of his characters had a different voice. Like, the Count sounds like this. Sherlock Hemlock sounds like this. Herbert Birdsfoot sounds like this. And I've noticed that you have come up with many different voices for your characters, and you gave a few of them earlier. Like, you were talking about a couple of voices that you created.
Yeah, Ginger Sprite. I don't know if you saw Johnny and the Sprites.
I did, yeah.
Splash and Bubbles.
I put both of those in here in the Q&A.
So, to me, I mean, I think Jerry and I would, your voice is like an instrument, and so you try to find as many notes to play as possible. And when you watch somebody perform, you want to make sure that when they see something that it's an orchestra. So if someone has a really high voice, then I'll pick a lower voice or something. So it depends on what we're doing.
That sounds like the Countess.
You know what I mean? Well, yeah,
I did do the Countess one. So, I mean, so I think that's what it is, also being able to sing, you know that you have to hit all kinds of notes, and, so I just think, he's definitely my hero.
When I had Patrick Bristow on here in November.
I love Patrick.
Hi, Patrick, if you're listening.
Hi, Patrick.
I'll let him know that we talked.
I love Patrick. He had great faith in me as an improviser. I'm like, I don't know enough. He goes, that's the best kind of improvising. Just go out there, listen, and support your partner. I'm like,
totally
I can do that.
Sounds like something he would say. But when I had him on here, we were talking a little bit about Puppet Up. And he had said that usually when he's watching the puppeteers, if he's looking at just the puppets, he can tell who's doing the puppeteering some of the time. And usually he's right. And he used you as an example.
Really?
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, I can tell that that's Leslie, and I can tell that that's Drew." And for anyone wondering who he meant by Drew Massey, who has not been a guest on this podcast,
but he will, and his new show is fantastic.
Right, Alan Troutman was talking about that when I had him on here in January, and I've been promoting it a little bit on the Nostalgia Talk Facebook page. Link in the description. But The Barbarian and the Troll on Nickelodeon here in Canada, it's on YTV. Watch it.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Wish I could play with them.
Maybe one day you'll have a guest appearance on it.
Yes, maybe one day.
But yeah, and so after Patrick was talking about when he can tell the puppeteering styles, I said, "Do you know who Jerry Nelson is?" And he said, "Of course I know who Jerry Nelson is." And I said, "Well, I noticed that he has a certain type of puppeteering style as well, and I noticed the same style with Jim Henson and Carol Spinney. That characters like Big Bird, well, especially Big Bird, because Carol's inside of it, it's pretty hard to puppeteer inside of it, I can imagine. But for characters like with Jim, with Ernie, and with Carol, with Big Bird, and Jerry, with almost all of his characters, they tend to skip a few syllables. And so that kind of makes it look like a very realistic performance, because if you move the mouth on every syllable, it just looks like the puppet is talking too fast.
I think it depends.
Okay.
Honestly, I think that there is no certain way that you should puppeteer a puppet. Like, I mean, I think it's whatever's organic to the character itself and their style. Lolly hits every syllable. I mean, she's a sock.
That's real. True.
Do you know what I mean? It's her style. Right. So I think it depends on the style of the puppet. I think it depends. I watched Bill Beretta a lot. Like, he picks and chooses. Some puppets are always full extension of the mouth. Some it's the style of the puppet, the craziness of the puppet, the way it's built. So I don't think there's really any one way to puppeteer. I think it depends on the character itself. And, sometimes it's good to be still. And sometimes, it is phonetic. So if somebody is phonetic and they talk like this, well, of course they're going to move everything because they're talking like that. And it has to do with the way they beat. And it's the energy behind the puppet. It's laid back. Yeah, right. I'm too lazy to hit every syllable.
Yeah,
you know,
just being
so
all
it
chill.
really, I think that's one thing I learned from Bill when I was watching. He'd say, watch everybody's style, you know. And I will say, and everybody has their own style, so you can borrow, but I think ultimately, like what Jerry did, and everybody does, is it's what the character would do.
Hmm.
What would this character do? And when you are truthful and at one with the piece that you're working on, that's when you believe it.
Okay, cool. I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just a different way, it's also about acceptance, and everybody has a different style. There's no right, there's no wrong,
Mm.
you
I
know.
did it. I did a puppeteering workshop at Neptune Theater in Nova Scotia about a year and a half ago, I think.
Hmm.
And when I did that, I remember we had to. I was in a scene with one person, and another person was in the scene, and we had to make it look like, okay, we're at the same point. It looks like we're about to bump into each other. How do we make this look like okay, get out of my way? So, but we couldn't talk. So I went around while the other person was like, oh, is that what I was supposed to do? And the instructor's like, okay, this is what I like to see, and then looks at me and he's like, but you know that because you're a puppeteer.
Right. Well, there's all kinds. Hi.
Hey, Lolly. Hey,
There's all
Lolly.
kinds of ways. Well, the thing too, that's it. That's for television puppeteering, right?
Mhm.
Because you can see, um, Chuck McCann is another one of my mentors. He was.
Yeah,
Do
Chuck
you know
McCann.
Chuck?
Oh, I know who he is. Absolutely. He was on DuckTales.
Yes, well, Chuck and I, this is great. Like, Chuck was a wonderful puppeteer, and he used to Paul Ashley puppets. In fact, he used to perform in New York, and they'd have these cabaret shows, and Jim Henson used to go to them. And they had puppets that, like, over like 120 puppets. Then they were Liza Minnelli, um, uh, Judy Garland, Laurel and Hardy. They were all these incredibly beautiful wood sculpted puppets, and um, they would, Sammy Davis Jr., all these incredible things. But Chuck would say, put your heart in your hand. But as a puppeteer, you are seeing everything, so you can direct yourself. Like, if you're a theatrical actor, and on stage, you can see that you're coming in downstage or upstage, or you're backing into a frame, you're not looking, you bump into somebody. That happens theatrically. And then if you're, working in film and TV and you're being directed, you have an awareness of where the cameras are, but you really can't see your performance. As a puppeteer, you can see your performance. So how you come in, if you come in quickly, if you sneak in, you back out, go in, you can see in front of you. And that you can tell a whole story, like you say, without even saying a word, depending on how you come in. And that, I think, has made me a better performer when I'm doing a theater project, just as a physical person. But yeah, puppetry is really amazing how you can pull people into your world.
Nice. Wow. Good words of wisdom. Hmm. So, do you have any celebrity stories from doing Muppets Tonight? Kevin Carlson had some about working with Prince.
Oh wow, that was magical.
Mm.
But do you want me to talk about Prince?
Well, if you have stories about Prince, go ahead. If you have any stories about any other celebrities, by all means.
Well, to me, again, this is where it was a master class again. Just like every puppet has a different style and personality, every celebrity would come on with a different energy in the room and how they approach stuff and their work. John Goodman was like his work ethic was impeccable. He's to give you 150%. Jason Alexander was hilarious.
I bet
He
he's so
he would do
funny.
a he was a study, because he would do like um we were doing this when he was doing Perot, I think, when we were on the train. And every time we shot that, he would find another physical comedy moment. It was really amazing. He kept getting better and better and better. And I remember when I remember accidentally I went into the Muppet workshop, and he was being fitted for his Bats costume, but for some reason the pattern they made was pink satin. He walked out and he was like a pink satin bat, and I'm like, oh, you're not going to wear that, are you? Because I was going to wear that on your show day. I've one just like that. And he was really funny, but we were hanging upside down as stalactites or stalagmites anyway, and having commentary about what he was doing down there, and he would look up and play with us. Prince was that was incredible. That was like, I think my husband talked about that. I remember we were super tired because we had a really late night of recording. Paul probably had 4 hours sleep. We were so exhausted.
Ooh.
And we were watching them submerge these beautiful puppets underwater, so it looked like they were floating. If you remember the Prince episode, and they superimposed it above where she was laying in bed, and Paul and I were just watching this, and it was just such a beautiful, that show. I think Jim Doltz won an Emmy for. I think they submitted that because the sets were incredible. Martin Short was incredible,
A fellow Canadian.
yeah, super funny. He was just crazy on. Let me see. Whoopi Goldberg was key to me. I was when I was at the theme park in Florida, I wrote a fan letter to Whoopi. I read an article about her and her comedy and bringing up her child and her doing her theater. And I needed to read that article to just keep going, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm away from my family. I read this article. It gave me inspiration and hope. And so I wrote her a fan letter. And then because I didn't know where I'd be living, I gave my mom and dad's address, in Nevada City, California. And my mom called me up. She goes, you got an envelope for Whoop Incorporated. And I'm like, what? Open it, Mama, open it. And she opened it, and it was an autographed picture of Whoopi Goldberg. And it says, thanks, Leslie, Whoopi. And I was like, sweet. Oh my God, I didn't ask for anything. I didn't ask for her to, I was like, she read my letter. Like she said, and so when she came on, I was like, I got to tell her, I was like, I wrote you a fan letter, and I'm Leslie. And, and also she was at the reading, and she realized that I was one of the few females at the table, and stuff like that. So I think she just kind of sistered me a lot, like she's like, hey, Leslie, she was really, a same thing happened. I did the thing where she was wearing the diamonds, and I'm like, I almost wore that again. I used to just go like, I almost wore that. And she goes, I saw that you wore it yesterday and wouldn't have the nerve to wear it today. I was like, eh. And so then flash forward to when I got Abby Cadabby, Whoopi had her radio show. It was right before she was leaving to go on The View, and she interviewed me.
Oh, nice.
And I said, Whoopi, remember, first I wrote you a letter, and then I was on Muppets, and now I'm here. And it was just like, and every time I see her, I get really shy because she meets so many people that she's inspired, just like Carol Burnett. I met her and I thought I was going to pass out.
Oh,
I
nice.
just was like, I just happened to be lucky to do a day on Julie's Green Room, and I made her pipe cleaner version of herself. And I was like, hi, I made this. But so I hope that's enough. There were so many celebrities. I'm probably going to think of a lot after we stop talking. But that was a big deal for me, to see somebody that you wrote a letter to, and you're like holding it. You're a penguin, and she's looking at you. You wrote me this letter. Let me just tell you, my favorite celebrity thing right now is my penguin got to sing with Billy Porter.
Yes, that aired recently on HBO Max.
That was all my favorite things in one place. I had to hold back tears the entire episode. I changed my outfit like 17 times in the morning. I had pants that had penguins on them. I was like, I'm performing with Billy Porter. I'm a huge fan. And it was my penguin, Penelope Penguin, who's one of my favorite characters, who doesn't get to be on that much.
Right.
I was just like, what? So
nice. So after Muppets Tonight, you did Wubbulous World of Dr. Seuss, which I didn't watch that much. It was a little bit before my time. I think I had a Wubbulous World of Dr. Seuss video somewhere. It's a cool looking show from what I've seen of it. Were you a fan of Dr. Seuss before then?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who was not a Dr. Seuss fan as a kid?
It's so, yeah. The Lorax. It was, yeah. Well, that was, yeah, actually after Muppets Tonight, reality hit, and I went back and I got hired to do Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, which is Lily Tomlin's one-person show at an Equity Theater in Florida, which is like insanely really hard and exciting. And I was in Florida and I got a call to say, do you want to audition for, it was 2 shows. It was Bear in the Big Blue House and Dr. Seuss.
Nice.
And they said, we will fly you up to New York. And I was like, I hadn't been to New York. Like, I was in New York when I was touring with the theater company I told you about, Fantasy Forum, but I'd never really been. Like, we went through New York. We got to see one show as a theater company. We saw Cats, and that was it. And I was overwhelmed by New York. And I was like, I'm just going to say yes. They're not going to hire me, but I want to go to New York. Free trip. I'm going. So I was such a dork. I had a Dr. Seuss tie. I showed up and everything. And they had me read like the lemur, or like they lemur and Pip and Pop and different things for Bear. And
wait,
then,
Trilo the lemur?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
my classmate's dad used to call that character Rainbow Butt Monkey.
That's a great name for it. And then they were looking, because Kathy Mullen wanted to direct, and I guess they didn't want her to do both. So I had to do more. They were looking for Morton and other things. So I got to play Morton the Elephant Bird for the second season, which was fun. Anyway, so and I had met my buddy John Kennedy on Muppets Tonight. And so I think when they offered me, they decided that I would fit in better at Dr. Seuss, which was awesome for me. But Kevin Clash was like, I said that Leslie could have the puppet chops to do this show, and I don't think she does. John, will you please help her? So I have to say, John Kennedy spent every weekend giving me more puppet training for that to be up, because I was with these amazing superstars again, but I was more prominent. Here I was going to have a prominent character, and then on that show again was life-changing, because I met Marty and Pam and Tim Lagasse and Nappy and Stephanie, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And John was going to be my dad. He was Horton, I was Morton. And then one show, it was Junior and Morton had a sleepover, and Tim Lagasse and I were under a bed all day making ourselves laugh till we were crying. And I was like, we're siblings, what's going on? We've been separated at birth. Like, Tim is just as crazy as I am, Tim Lagasse. And then I just met these people, and then Tim took me to see James Godwin in his puppet show, which were the Elementals. And I was blown away. That's when I realized puppetry was just a whole nother world. And I became a super fan of the Elementals and James Godwin. And then Pam told me about the O'Neill Puppetry Conference. So it was then when I realized that I went into a really wonderful world of puppetry that was so much more than I'd ever dreamed of. Nice. And that's when my head exploded, and it's amazing I'm here.
Quick little question. Who's Nappy?
Jim Napolitano.
Okay.
He does shadow puppetry, and he and Tim Lagasse are really good friends. And okay. So Jim Napolitano introduced me to shadow puppetry and stuff too. So.
Nice. Now, before you landed Abby Cadabby, you were in the Sesame Street, or at least you were credited in it, the Sesame Street feature film Elmo and Grouchland. And I'm just going to say that right now. I was 6 months old, close to 6 months old when that movie came out, so I never got to see in the theater, but that is my childhood, basically. Like, I remember watching it as a kid, and even as an adult, the music is so, oh my God, like, it was composed by the great film composer John Debney, who is an incredible film composer. I don't know if Paul showed you this. I sent it to him, but I have a best friend who lives in another country, and we did a video together recently over Zoom where we were quizzing each other on how well we know each other. And the second I saw that she was in the Zoom waiting room, the score from Elmo and Grouchland was in my head.
Wow. Wow.
So Sean,
that's a wonderful story.
So Sean, if you are listening, let's do that again sometime.
Hi, Sean. Well, sadly, I just did ADR for that movie.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, I don't think I deserve a credit. But what happened is that they had additional, just like, you know how they have looping and stuff in movies where you fill in the background scenes. I did like I did that for The Simpsons. You know, you do background voices for the characters and, you know, the crowd scenes and stuff like that. So that's what I did. Like, if there was additional Grouches or things that were happening, I did voices for that. So I didn't get to work on it. So sorry about that.
That's all right. Have you ever actually watched it?
I've watched parts of it, but I need to sit down and see the whole magic of it all.
I did the other night.
Oh, I'm going to do it. That'll be my thing tonight.
Nice.
That'll be great.
Yeah. Oh my God. Such a cute little film, especially because again, I was 6 months old, you know, and I wasn't old enough to actually sit through a movie.
No, yeah. I mean, you're like,
yeah. So, Ricky Boy last week talked a little bit about how he got the role of Waffle on Animal Jam. Can you talk a little bit about how you got the role of Edie?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had just done a show that I created for Disney called The Wahoo Wagon. That was a live show that played at the Disney El Capitan Theater and it ran for, I would say 3.5, 4 months. And it was, you know, you'd have to be in California to see it, but they have this big, beautiful theater, and I would do a show, which is with my characters and everything. And so my characters that I created and everything were kind of tied up with Disney for a long time. So I kind of was off the radar. And Hallie Stanford said, you know, we're developing this idea, Animal Jam. And that show had ended and I didn't, you know, I was teaching at the Y, and she said, are you available I'm very available. And she goes, we're just going to do a pilot, you know, for this show, and you know, come play with kids. Well, that's all I've ever done is play with kids. So I was playing with kids and I did the pilot, and then we sang, and they put the pilot together, and Hallie goes, do you want to be Edie? They really like you. And I'm like, of course, I would love to be Edie. I love to be Edie. And so I got to be Edie based on the pilot, that they liked my voice. And then that's when we went to Disney World, and we just played. It was just so super magical. And then Ricky was just hilarious. And I don't know if you know this about Ricky, but he can puppeteer both right-handed and left-handed.
I have noticed that, yes.
Yeah, and I can't do that. It's not pretty. I could do Polar Dodo, can be left-handed, my one character. But we did so much singing and everything, and it was so physical. He goes, my hand's cramping, because his character Waffle would talk really fast. So he'd take it off and he'd put it on his other hand and he puppeteered just as good. And I'm like, Ricky, you're amazing.
Yeah.
So that was, like I said, I loved it because I loved the music on that. And I loved playing with kids, that we had that live element. And that really was a lot of work. So that's where I got most of my training.
Nice. And then not too long after that came, I should have
Do you
brought
have
it
a
here.
timeline? This is amazing. I think after that was, what was that? Johnny? The Sprites?
Might have been, but I have that somewhere in here. It's not up next, unfortunately.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But actually, I should have brought it, but I showed Ricky this Animal Jam DVD that I have.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
With Bozark.
Yeah. Did you see the movie Old Dogs?
No.
The Bozark puppet was in that. It was with Robin Williams and John Travolta.
Oh my God. I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, and actually, since you mentioned John Kennedy, I think he puppeteered in it. His name's in the credits.
Yeah, he did. He did the panda.
Oh, okay. Cool.
And he also did the baby water buffalo.
Yeah, he's in Old Dogs as well.
Yeah, and Andy Stone and John Tartaglia.
Right. I have
Johnny was the koala and Andy was the cougar.
Yeah, the very dumb cougar.
Yeah, he was.
I was talking to Ricky Boyd about one of my favorite moments where it was the Shake a Leg song, and DJ3, which is Andy Stone, it was like, oh, I thought it's Shake an Egg. And they're like, yeah, of course you would think that. Just start the countdown.
But you know what? Andy was, he was my assist for Edie because he was an incredible dancer. Mm-hmm. So that's why Edie, she's got all this stuff. That's Andy, right. He would help me with that. So nice. It was great.
And now on to the biggest character that you've got, one of Sesame Street's biggest stars, Abby.
You're gonna skip over Ginger Sprite? Poor baby.
We'll get there eventually.
Oh, I see.
Eventually came along one of Sesame Street's biggest stars, Abby Cadabby.
Well, I wouldn't say biggest star, but that's very thoughtful. A star is a ball of gas.
Well, my friend Michelle and her husband Will, they have a daughter who loved Abby Cadabby when she was younger.
Oh, nice.
And I remember hearing from Paul for the first time about coming on Nostalgia Talk. Actually, since I mentioned my best friend Sean, I had just gotten off the phone with her, and then my email says you have one new message, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so it was Paul, and then I texted Sean, and I was like, hey, I know we finished up a video chat, but I have news anyway. And so once Paul and I started talking about him coming on the show, I texted Michelle and I said, I have some news, and that is Sesame Street's vocal music director is coming to the show, and his wife is Abby Cadabby. Awesome. And then I ended up meeting you after.
I know. Well, we met on Muppets Tonight, and yeah.
And I actually phoned Michelle right after I finished talking with you and Paul, and I was like, guess who I just met?
We'll have to talk to Michelle later. Okay, thanks, Abby. Yeah, no problem. She's hilarious. Yeah, Abby likes to give messages all the time. You ask her, she's practically, she's like, I'll leave a message. I'm like, okay.
Nice. So how did you hear about the role of Abby Cadabby?
I heard lots about it. Like, I think the first time I heard about it was at the O'Neill Puppetry Conference, where Marty's wife, Annie, was one of the writers for Sesame Street. And she goes, they're developing a fairy character. I'm like, really? And then Marty goes, there's a fairy character. And then, once it was announced, like, people know me because I've always have a fairy garden. I always have fairy dust because I'm an honorary fairy. So many people said, did you hear about this audition? Did you hear about this? And then Kevin Clash had called and said, there are having auditions for this fairy character. And I was like, at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, I was doing Johnny and the Sprites, and I felt super blessed, and I was in New York for that. And like I say, I never take work for granted because I've had my own business since I was 16, painting windows, doing parties. So I'm just trying to figure out how to pay rent constantly, and I just gotten a theater in LA that I convinced to let me teach after school theater program. And I was going to do a Christmas show for them, a holiday show for them. And if I auditioned for this, I wouldn't have been able to do the holiday show. And I felt like I would be letting them down. And I said, well, I said that I would be doing this. And then I went to the theater and I'm like, you idiot, it's Sesame Street. We're always going to be here. This is something that you've always dreamed of. And Kevin's like, this could help you with your dreams. This is going to help you reach even more kids. Your whole life, my whole life has been dedicated to helping children love themselves through the arts, the young and young at heart. It's been my major in school. Everything I do is all everything Lolly does, everything. So when I heard about it, then I got a call from I think they were doing it through a commercial agency, or my agent called and said, listen, they don't know how to shoot puppets. they're having auditions, like actresses were showing up, like people were showing up that knew nothing, and they don't know how to set up a camera or anything. Can you help them? So I'm like, sure. So I went to the agency that was getting all the auditions, and they sent puppets all over the United States, and England. They sent like a whatnot and the sides, which are like the the scripts and a song, and in Florida, Atlanta, California, just all different places. And so I helped the agency set up the camera. I said, this is how you set up the camera. You put the monitor on the ground. They're going to tape up their scripts there. So I have some tape ready for them in case they didn't bring any. And don't move the camera. You're doing them a disservice. And it's also it's going to help the people auditioning know whether or not the people know how to puppeteer. So some people didn't even know to keep their head out of the shot. People didn't know. So it kind of let them know that this is the job. And so then I went and I auditioned, and then they sent the tape in, and I got a call back.
Nice.
And Kevin's like, you said you weren't auditioning. I'm like, I changed my mind. And then I went to the callback, and you mentioned Cheryl Blaylock, but I remember the day I was so nervous because they flew me to New York again, and I had all my lucky things. I'd written a story about what I thought this character was in my mind. I hadn't even seen what she looked like. I had Lolly with me. Thank you, Newhart. Thanks, buddy. You've done a great job. Thanks for telling me someone's here. So then I had Lolly with me, and I was so nervous because my audition was in the afternoon, and I didn't know what to do or where I was. And I called up Cheryl, and she goes, meet me in the garden. I'm in Central Park, and I'm taking care of this part of the garden. And I'm like, okay. So on the way there, I went to the dog park because I'm obsessed with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So I pet every dog to make sure that my hand was filled with puppy love. And then I met Cheryl, and then I put on Lolly, and I played with kids with Lolly. And I'm just like, you know what, this is my heart, and this is the energy I have. And then I was like, if I get it, great. If I don't, at least I know I gave it my all. And then I went up, and Sonia Manzana was there. Fran Brill was there. I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to faint. I think I'm going to cry. I can't believe this is happening. And so I was starstruck. I got my picture taken with them. And then Fran, we did some of the sides, but then Fran and I just improvised between Zoe and Abby. And because, Fran's an actress and stuff, and we improvised. Kevin sent me my tape later, and he goes, I want you to look at this. And all of a sudden, Abby was there. My little goddaughter called me, and she's like, you got this. Like, if you are a fairy, and just know, no matter what, you're my fairy. And she, and I was like, that's the voice. That's the voice. And then it happened.
Nice.
So.
I remember Abby's first ever appearance. I remember actually going back to 2006 was when Abby was introduced. And I remember my mom was reading in the newspaper, there's a new character coming to Sesame Street, a fairy. I wonder who, because I knew some of the puppeteers' names. I knew Fran Brill, Frank Oz, Kevin, Jerry, Carol, Jim, Richard, Carmen Osbar. And so I thought maybe it'll be like Fran Brill or somebody. Because that was my first guess. Yeah. But that was your, again, I'm going to say it again, big character. That's one of the big stars of Sesame Street. And just moments before you signed in, I did some digging, and I found a Sesame Street magazine, which actually was a little introduction to Abby.
Really? I've never seen it.
Well, there's the front page, well, not really front page, but the first page after you open it has a little activity with Abby in it.
Look at her. She's so fun. She's such a little puppy dog. I call her my fairy puppy because her wings flap when she's happy, like a puppy dog tail, or her ears and everything. She laughs, she pants Like she goes, "Are you panting?" I'm like, "Yeah," and it just kind of started happening. Like she just started developing more and more. And like I wrote so much on my own, a little Abby journal, how she felt about each character on the show. Her relationship, how she idolizes Rosita and wishes she could speak
Aw.
2 languages. And Zoe is such a wonderful dancer. And Elmo she loves his laugh. It just makes her so happy. And, she just had feelings about everybody. So
Nice. I remember an episode where Abby and Zoe wanted to be twins. That was that was a funny one where there was twins all over Sesame Street, either identical twins or fraternal twins. Like
Marty's
Chris
kids were on there.
Oh really? Oh
No,
really?
not Marty's. Peter Linz's kids. His girls were on.
Nice.
Yeah, I think maybe Annie. I can't remember if Annie had the twins yet, but yeah, definitely Peter Linz's twins were in that episode.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, that was a good episode.
That was great.
Yeah. So, what are some of your favorite Abby songs?
Oh, golly, there's so many beautiful ones. I really love I Got Big Feelings with Roscoe Orman. He is Gordon. It was when Abby went through the divorce. I don't know if you saw that episode.
Oh, yeah, I
and
remember that.
And she's like Roscoe, he sounds so gorgeous on that song, and he is just helping Abby through this big time. And it was so beautiful. So I really love that song, because that's an emotional thing for me. And I love Roscoe so much. And I was really honored to be able to say I'm feeling all kinds of things right now. And that was emotional. I love Abby in Wonderland. I just want my one and I just want to go home. I remember recording that song was really emotional for me because my dad was very sick, and we were shooting this movie, and I just wanted to go home and be with my dad, and he was going through treatments, and it was really rough time for me. And we were recording in the studio, and I just really felt like what it feels like to be far away from home. So I really put my heart into that. And Kevin knew that. And he was so sweet. He was directing, and he had everybody call in to wish me happy birthday every day. He would play a different happy birthday down. I was like, oh, I Can Sing High and I Can Sing Low. When we recorded that song, it was just playing around. How funny that was, playing with Elmo back and forth. Ryan and I did a really pretty song too. It was like a rain song. I love all the songs, and I love them for different reasons. I think her Lolly, excuse me. Sorry, Lolly. Abby's broccoli song is hilarious. Last night when I sat down to eat my dinner.
Sounds like opera, basically.
Yeah. To me, that was like, that really kind of like, the fact that Chrissy Ferrara wrote like Abby like sea shanties, they just started keying into me a little bit and making her more obscure and weird and silly. So the broccoli song was really kind of like, that was so, dare I say, Warner Brothers of her to be that weird and kooky. I know I'm going to think of different songs when I leave, but those were some fun ones.
One of my favorites was one that
Words.
That is a good one, yes. But
I like that because Mike Pensuso, who's a brilliant artist and was working on the show, he's a brilliant graphic artist, and he's doing some stuff for me now, is he did all the graphics for that. So words, and more words.
Nice. One that I really love is one that was used on Sesame Street back in the 70s and was sung by Abby and Elmo in a segment. It was 2 is my favorite number. 2 is neat.
Yes, I do love that.
I remember one time I saw that and I texted Sean and I was like, this is us. This is totally us.
Yeah, that is a great number. Thanks for reminding me. And that was fun to shoot too, because we were just playing around. We were in limbo. So it was just blue behind us, which means it's all puppetry, playing around and laughing and like, oh, and also too, when you shoot those, a lot of times you'll like you have to go with whoever has the best move, or there might be a camera thing or something. And sometimes as puppeteers, we're like, don't take that shot. Oh, they have to, you know? So sometimes we're messy, at least me. Sometimes I'm messy. Everybody I work with is perfect.
Well, since we're talking about the music of Sesame Street, somebody who I am very close friends with who was on this show is Ivy Austin. I don't know if you know Ivy.
I do, but I don't know her personally.
Okay. But basically, every time I ask someone at Sesame Street, hey, do you know who Ivy Austin is? They often say to me, oh, yeah, that's Danny Epstein's daughter. And so I wonder, because of my friendship with Ivy, I wonder if you have any Danny Epstein memories that you'd like to share.
The only Danny Epstein memory I can share is when he played on Jerry Nelson's. I'm trying to think. No, that was not him. I'm so embarrassed. Wait, I feel like, was Danny Epstein on Truro Dreams? I have to ask Paul.
I think he was.
Yes. So that would be it. Mike Renzi. I was thinking of Mike Renzi. Mike Renzi was the musical director when I first started, and he would go, "Hey Leslie, is this a good key for you? I'm just calling. Where are you? I just need to know. Would Abby sing in this key?" You know, he's like, "Okay, thanks." You know, but would be at that recording session where we had a live recording session where people got to sit in the studio, and Stephanie DeBruzzo and Tyler Brunch and I got to sing backup on that, on his CD. And that would just be in that room with all those musicians and just watching them be in their element and happy and loving each other. So,
and that was for the song Noah's Ark on that album, right?
Grooving on Noah's Ark, all of them. It was all the songs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My grandfather, Grumpy, the one who's nicknamed Grumpy, I downloaded that album for him, and he loves it, and he especially loves the Noah's Ark song.
It's hilarious.
But my particular favorite on that album is actually Tides, because Grumpy used to sail. He just sold his boat the other week, and when we would sail, I'd often play either that or the song Sailing by Christopher Cross.
Oh, that's great.
That's a great song.
Really, you have such great memories with Grumpy.
Oh yeah, we always have a good time hanging out. Speaking of the music of Sesame Street, there was an episode that aired a couple of years ago that was a tribute to Judy Fruberg, and you performed the little Judy Fruberg Muppet in that. And
Yes.
the reason that I think about that one when it's connected to the music of Sesame Street is because there were a couple of songs that were co-written by a Sesame Street music legend who was a guest on this show back in
Chris Surf.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. That was a really good episode. I never thought of it as a tribute to Judy Fruberg at the time, but it was actually written for any of the listeners who haven't seen it. The episode was actually written by one of my writing idols, Molly Boylan.
Yes, Molly and Judy were really good team writers. They wrote a lot together, and I remember, and Lisa Simon directed it, who was one of Judy's best friends.
Aww.
So that was a very emotional day on the street. And I remember Kevin, he's like, "You're going to play Judy," and I was like, "Oh my gosh," But Abby's in it too. So for that, when Abby was in the scene with Judy. At the time, John Kennedy, because he had spent the most time with me, was doing Abby.
Oh, really?
And when we were in the scene together, and I went back and looped it. But I just remember what a magical day that was, for all of us. And Molly and Chris was on set, and Lisa was directing, and it was like Judy was with us. It was Judy and the Beast.
Right.
And it was her, she was trying to find the animal just that fits her the best. And Judy had a horse that she just loved. So it was just a magical moment on Sesame Street that has a beautiful layer underneath it. So,
Sean, if you're listening, have you seen that episode? She loves horses. She rides. So
yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah. And that was also the year that they did the Jerry Nelson tribute episode where it was like, "I am the Count. No, I am the Count."
Yeah, that was so great. Well, actually, I think Abby was wearing a pretty little blue gown in that episode, I think. because I
Okay.
think we were all super dressed up. And that's the gown that Abby wears whenever, if we make a fancy appearance, I go, can you put
Oh,
Abby in her gown?
cool.
And falsely, let me just say this, Life magazine did a whole spread on Sesame Street and they got it wrong. They said Abby was a fairy princess in training. She's never been a princess. And they didn't put her in her, they had a picture of her in that blue dress, which isn't, she rarely wears it.
Wow.
Rarely. She's only worn it 3. I was like, didn't anybody check Time magazine? I was so mad. I'm like, she's not a fairy princess. She's a fairy. It's a completely different, that's her she's a creature.
Right. I always
So
thought, I always assumed as a 7-year-old when Abby was introduced that she was a monster.
I love that. Well, she's pink. The fur that they use is literally called cuddle fur. Ask Raleigh Crusive is Abby's mommy. I always say Raleigh's Abby's mommy because she's like a brilliant puppet builder. You should have her on. And she kind of looks like Raleigh actually. And Raleigh, her daughter has a little corgi named Abby. And corgis are the chariots for fairies. I don't know if you know. If you Google corgi and fairy, there's a whole folklore.
I'll have to check that out. Since you were mentioning Abby's attire at times, I noticed in recent seasons a little bit of a wardrobe change. Was that your idea? Was it the puppet crew's idea?
It was not my idea. No, I love her dress. I love her little fairy dress. I think Abby got, like, when she first came out, people are saying, like, the feminists, like, why is she in a dress? Why is she? I was like, this is her culture. Why does she get things wrong? I'm like, Abby's resilient. She's not a girl that gets things wrong. She's a girl that looks at whatever she makes a mistake as an opportunity to grow and learn and get through it and persevere. And I remember really fighting hard for Abby. But no, I think they just wanted to, I can't remember the reasoning behind it. Like the first time they introduced it, it wasn't really, it was experimental. So it evolved from that one season because it wasn't really her. And now it's evolved even more. So she has a little light around her neck, like the skirt lit up. And that was just not, it was fun, but it wasn't really Abby. And it changed her silhouette a little bit because they're still working things out. So now she has a t-shirt that has a little hand stitched Gerber daisy on it that Connie in the workshop hand stitches. So it looks like little handmade. And then Sierra, I'm going to get Sierra's last name wrong, but she made this little necklace that has a little firefly on it. And the firefly's name is Hope. It's named after Sierra's little sister, but also it lights up and light brings hope and light. So that has a double meaning. And then Jason hand dyed her petal dress because her petal dress is signature, like fairies, like you can't see, but like above me, I have all this fairy world above me that has this whole little fairy world. So so she went through that. It's fine. I look at it as like maybe those are her play clothes. Maybe her mom got tired of washing her fairy dress, but hopefully they'll go back and forth and I always love when they put Abby in stuff. It's hilarious when she's got her different outfits on. I think all of our characters look funny when they dress in different outfits.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about Abby's Flying Fairy School. And I actually just had Ed Valentine on here at the beginning of the month.
Oh, I love Ed. Ed and I know each other from the O'Neill Puppetry Conference.
Right. He was saying that.
And we actually met I was doing an episode of Tough Puppy. And Ed was in the room and I was, I play, I don't know if I play Peg Puppy, which is
right.
The puppy's mother. And I met Ed and he goes, I think I'm going to be writing for Sesame Street or something. I can't remember, but we met before we met. So
nice. The Peg sounds like Howard's mom from The Big Bang Theory.
Oh yes, it probably does.
I've been watching.
She's based on a character that Leslie does in a show called Minnie Bladder.
Oh my God. So when you did Abby's Flying Fairy School, did it feel strange just doing the voice of the character in the studio rather than just having the puppet on your hand?
No, not really, because the way we filmed that, which was really great, we filmed it when I say filmed it, sorry, we recorded it. We were all in the same room. So it was like a radio play.
Mhm.
And that was really cool because we were all together. So there was Tyler Bunch, Jen. Oh, I can't think of Jen's last name, but she was
Stone.
she was on Broadway. Her husband is hilarious and amazing. I love Jen. She was the perfect Miss Sparklenose. And then Gone Again. Do you know Gone Again? Because you're
Jeremy Redleaf.
Thank you so much. I'm so bad.
I had a couple of chats with him a while back.
Tell him I said hi.
Will do.
And you know, and then Joey Mazzarino was blog and stuff. And so we were all in the same room playing and doing incidental characters and stuff like that. So it was such a radio play. It was so fun. And we we're playing off each other's energy. So it was a blast. I really loved that.
Nice.
And I love that Abby was kind of like, that's where she really got to be like, kind of like, you know, like a Peppermint Patty, like type of like, she got to be like, I'm your best friend. You know, we got this team. We got this, you know.
Yeah, Grumpy would refer to that as Pollyanna.
Yeah, which is a good movie, actually, with Haley Mills.
Oh,
but,
really?
But she's got spunk, you know.
So you played a character named Becky in a recent Sesame Street Christmas special, and it was the Once Upon a Sesame Street Christmas.
Oh, you mean Smudge? Yeah.
I remember watching that. I remember watching that episode special, and because she got that street smart kind of a New York.
I really miss her. I really love that character. It was based on, you know, Jerry goes, "Are you basing that on me?" I'm like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, maybe.
I still remember when she took Elmo's ball, and it's like that's an E. No, that's Smudge. My name is Smudge, and Elmo falls for it, and I'm like, there's no way you're that dumb. And then he keeps going up there and saying, "Hey, Smudge," and I looked at my mom who's watching it with me. I looked at my mom and I said, "This guy's an idiot."
Hey, I'm very convincing when I need to be. You know what I mean? You gotta be in the room with me to know that I have that kind of charisma that I can make anybody believe anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What I noticed about that special is that it really picks up it takes place in like before the events of the actual Sesame Street show. So it really does pick up the continuity of the fact that Abby moved there about 10 years before the special. So nobody even knew her ancestors or her family. Do you think that Becky, I almost said Smudge, Becky or Smudge was kind of created to take over for Abby, like to kind of take her place in that special?
Oh, wow. That's deep. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so. I think that this is just me. I think they just wanted to tie in, you know, it was a different time, you know, that real people could be just as entertaining as fairies. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, Becky. I don't know. I think for me personally, I'm so excited when I get to play a different character. You know, I love playing Abby so much. She's so much fun. She's like a puppy dog. I'm like, oh, I get to fly this puppy fairy. But I think maybe they wanted an older sensibility, you know, I think it's also for kids that don't believe in Santa anymore. And I think it's awesome for, you know, maybe they've lost a little bit of light and joy. And especially, you know, Becky, she doesn't have a ball. You know, things were like, she doesn't know where her family is, and her dad's a cop, which is hilarious. Her dad, Mr. Johnson, right? So I don't think Abby would have. Abby's, you know, Abby's a completely different vibe. So, you know, Becky's just like, what is this kid? Why is he so Pollyanna, to quote Grumpy? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that was the sensibility that they wanted.
Right. Yeah, Jim Gaffigan was in that. He was doing
That's
Santa
my
Claus.
idea. I take full on credit for Jim Gaffigan.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because I think he's hilarious, right? And he has so many kids, and they hadn't found a Santa, and I wrote a letter and I said, I think Jim Gaffigan should be our Santa. And I actually wanted him to be the Santa and like the spirit. It would be so funny if he was both characters. But he was so convincing as Santa. He changed his voice that people didn't realize he was Jim Gaffigan. I'm like, they don't know he's Jim Gaffigan. Yes. So that was my idea. I take credit.
Nice. Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing. A few months after that special had aired, because like I know Tyler Bunch and I know Frankie Cordero, and I saw on their social
They're
media
great.
page. Yeah, I saw on their social media pages, and Ryan, I don't know Ryan Dillon, but I saw on his
Ryan's
as well.
amazing. Yeah.
But I had seen on the social media pages of a bunch of people who were working on that special that Jim Gaffigan was in it. And a couple of months later, I get this text from my dad, and he says, Jim Gaffigan is coming to Halifax. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know who Jim Gaffigan is. He worked with Marty and Frankie and Tyler. And my dad's like, do you want to go? And I was like, well, sure. And he was very funny.
He's funny. Yeah. He's, there's not a lot of comedians that you can bring that work clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen John Cleese recently, and his
wow.
and Grumpy was at that one as well. And John Cleese made it a lot like a university lecture.
Oh my God. I bet it was it fun? Did you like it?
I liked it. Grumpy said that he wasn't exactly as funny as he used to be, but I enjoyed just sitting there and watching it.
Yeah, that's nice.
And since we were talking about one-off characters like quote unquote Smudge, now I'm gonna want to call her Smudge every time. But
you can call me Smudge. I like it. I go by Smudge. Most people call me Smudge.
Well, you fooled enough people with that.
Yeah, I told you I got charisma.
Do you have any favorite one-off characters that you performed? Because I can always tell when you're
Well,
doing
I love that
character.
penguin. I don't count it as a one-off because I was in Elmo the Musical Airplane. When I was the penguin, I was trying to get married. But
I'm getting married at 11.
Yeah, but
Emily Pearl
started.
Kingsley wrote that.
Yeah. Well, I started in Panwappa Islands. I was the penguin in Panwappa Islands, right?
Nice.
And so, then I ended up in that particular musical. And then Marty's wife, Annie, wrote another episode where I am Big Bird's pen pal, which I was in that, and I don't pick up social cues too well. I hug too hard, and I put fish on people's ice cream, which was awkward, and I learned that. And then randomly, they wrote this Billy Porter song for me. Oh my gosh!
And so Penelope is my favorite. I don't want her to be a one-off character. I think Minnie the Mina was a really important one-off character about a mina bird who takes over Big Bird's nest.
Oh yeah.
And it was about bird law, and not Molly wrote it. Belinda Ward wrote that, and it was about how not all laws should be what they are. It was very Dr. Seuss in the sense that it was making a social commentary that some laws shouldn't apply anymore. And I think it was probably during like gay marriage stuff and things like that were happening where like we shouldn't, not all these laws are wrong. There shouldn't be a law for that. And so it was an important character, and it was really difficult because I had to strike a tone where the bird wasn't mean. It was just single-minded. And so I remember calling Lisa Simon, who was directing the episode, and I go, can I run a couple voices by you? And can we talk about this script a little bit to make sure I hit the right tone? So kids aren't put off by this character. They just know that this bird isn't thinking about the big picture. It's being selfish. It doesn't know any better, because we didn't want to, we just need to evolve. And so I think that was I like that one-off character. Gosh, I've done so many one-off characters that I can't. I just did a beaver recently. I named her Brenda, but I don't think she'll ever see the light of day. That's for something else. That's for Elmo's late night show.
Oh, nice.
I don't know. Can you think of any?
One of my favorite one-off roles was in an episode where Bert was looking for a place to nap because he was sick and tired of Ernie's crap. and you played a delivery woman who had said to Bert, the delivery woman goes into Huber's store and I think drops everything she's carrying and looks at Bert and is like, I wouldn't take a nap in a store.
I don't even remember that. I don't even remember that.
The other one that comes to mind is from a skit with Frank and Jerry where Grover was serving Mr. Johnson at a coffee place to give him the freshest cup of coffee in the world.
My God, the lactose intolerant cow.
Yeah, who just drank.
No, not that. The deranged cow. That was
drank a cold cup of coffee and then the eyes were bulging. Mr. Johnson's like, where's my coffee? And the cow was incredibly caffeinated.
That was a nightmare because I actually hit Frank Oz in the head with my cow's butt that day and I wanted to die. I wanted to die.
Oh.
It was like, I was so like, to this day, every time I see Frank Oz, I've met him, seen him, worked with him. I still can't talk around him. I'm just like, I'm going to throw up in my mouth because instantly I'm rendered stupid. And I don't know why. It's just like, it's like one of those people that you admire and you're embarrassed because like, oh my God, I've been staring at you a lot and I'm so embarrassed. I just want to die. And he was coming up with like Joey was directing and he goes, Leslie, I need you to do this. And I'm like, okay. And then Frank Oz came over and he goes, Leslie, I need you to do this. And it was the opposite of what Joey had just told me to do. And Joey's my director and Frank Oz asked me to do something and he's Grover. And I was like, what am I going to do? So I ended up doing what Frank Oz told me to do.
Which ended up hitting him on the head.
Ended up, well, maybe, no. But anyway, and then Joey came up, he goes, Les, why didn't you do what I said? I'm like, oh, because Frank told me. And then Frank goes, oh, I'm sorry. I told her to do this. And I'm like, and I was like, so glad that he heard that because I felt like, so anyway, we ended up, but my idea, I'm like, how about if the cow just wipes the scene? How about if the cow just ends up going towards that? Because they weren't sure if they had a button. So I got,
It definitely brought back the more classic kind of Sesame Street stuff that they did back in the day.
I love it.
So moving on a little bit from the Muppets and Sesame Street, let's talk a little bit about doing Blues Room. So before doing Blues Room, did you have to watch the original Blues Clues TV show, or was it just kind of like, okay, you're going to be doing this?
That was really interesting. It was mostly the audition process because Tracy, who developed Blue, went bow, 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 and they just didn't know how she sounded. And so basically, originally, they were just looking for the right voice to put inside of her and what her personality was and what her sensibility was. And they had auditions. And so they asked me to do it. But then shortly after I had already filmed everything, they decided that they were going to put a kid's voice in there. And for me, at the time, I didn't live in New York and it was financially a burden for me to come out and do that when they literally went from needing a voice to just needing the puppeteer to perform it. And so I loved working with everybody. They were super wonderful. I met Cheryl Blaylock on that. It was really fun for me to do that show. The show was wonderful, but I just couldn't financially, and I was away from my husband and my family. So I ended up only just doing the first season and then they didn't use my voice. So I knew that it wouldn't be, there's so many brilliant puppeteers in New York that the character would still be lifted up and still be wonderful.
Nice. Yeah, I was a Blues Clues kid back in the day, and I remember watching Blues Room, and this is going to show you how much of a dumb kid I was years ago when I was in single digits. But
you mean a fun kid?
You can say fun. I'm going to say dumb.
Okay.
But I remember Blue introducing to the viewer, and he would say, "Hi, you," and I'm thinking to myself, I have an actual person's name. You know that, right? That is the first time I have ever told anyone that since.
I love it. Well, you talk to me.
Yeah, seems like. See, I guess so, huh? For the first, it's rare that this ever happens, but somebody has actually sent me fan questions.
Really?
A big thank you to those of you who sent some fan questions along. There's some really good ones in here. But before we get to those, the projects that you were asking me about earlier, you were on both of John Tartaglia's shows, Johnny and the Sprites and Splash and Bubbles. And of course, both of those shows were very different. I actually have John Tartaglia's autograph in here, and it's signed by him, and there's signatures from the Sprites, and it says your pal John Tartaglia and Root, Ginger, the rest of them. I only watched that show a bit. Splash and Bubbles was cute because I like the animation of it. Did you get on those shows because of your connection to John?
Yeah, absolutely. Johnny and I, the first time I met Johnny I was on Muppets Tonight, and I flew out to do a workshop. And I met him there, and he's like, "You're Leslie Carrara, and you've done blah, 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 and blah, blah." I was like, "You know all this stuff about me. How?" I'm like, "I'm mostly a comedian, entertainer." This is my first gig. And then when we worked on Animal Jam together, we're just like brother and sister. We just had similar energy and super energetic and stuff. And then he asked me to audition for Johnny and the Sprites. He goes, "Lele, will you sit?" He calls me Lele.
Lele.
He's like, "Lele, do you want to send in an audition? I'm creating a show." And so I go, "I don't have a puppet. Can I just use Lolly?" So I send in an audition tape of Lolly, and it's really hard for me to audition with Lolly. I should have made a different puppet because only Lolly comes through, but I sang Somewhere That's Green, and it just didn't really work. And so I was at the O'Neill Puppetry Conference, and they were having auditions. I go, "Johnny, I know I sent you a tape, but can I come in person? Because I just feel like I could do a better job if I had an actual puppet and improv." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm glad you're on this coast, because otherwise I couldn't afford to come out here just to audition." So I went to the audition, and Johnny said, "It was your audition that totally, you did Ginger, and it was done." I did something like I was auditioning with another puppet performer who wasn't, the improv wasn't going so well because he wasn't, yes-anding too much. And finally my character goes, "Listen, I'm trying to help you." Like, "Let me help you." It was just one of those things where Ginger's like crazy spunk, like tomboy came through. And he said, we laughed so hard. I'm like, "There's Ginger." And so then we just had so much fun. And then I was out in Los Angeles again. So Johnny and I have always been on opposite coasts, usually sometimes. And so I was out in Los Angeles because I'm from Northern California, but so I usually go home to see my mom. But I was in LA, and I happened to be on the Henson lot, and I was looking for a job. And I go, "Hey, what's going on?" And he goes, "Lele, do you want to read for this character?" And I'm like, "What is it?" And he goes, "It's for, Splash and Bubbles." And I'd seen his live show several times, and I thought it was wonderful. And I'm like, "Sure." And he goes, she's kind of about like Ginger, but a sprite, but a fish. I'm like, "Really?" And so, okay. So, anyway, so I read for it, and he goes, "Well, come in and work on this, motion capture thing." And I'm like, "Oh my God, no, God, I don't know." And I had done a long time ago a Francis HDPS show for the Henson Company where I played the mom. And, you program the facial expressions and everything. And the mom was really laid back. She was really cool. There was not a lot going on in her face. And she was, "Oh, Francis." She was totally, simple, little eye blinks and stuff like that. Anyway, so I did it. And he goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "This is for the pilot." And I'm like, "What? You said I was just, what?" "I thought I was just helping you out for a thing." And he goes, "Yeah, you're going to be I was like, "What? Bubbles?" So then I was like, holy cow. And then by the time it got going, Sesame Street was going, and I had to go to Sesame Street and say, "Listen, this is can I please do this? Is it gonna, can we make the seasons work? So I did every episode except for like 4. Alice Deneen did 4 of my episodes
Oh,
where
nice.
she did the fish and then I did the voice. But what was amazing about that is, you say it's animated, but it isn't. It's HDPS. It looks animated, but it's not. And so this is where my dad, helped me. I felt his shoulders on my, I felt him with me, because we program all the facial expressions. Well, because I draw all the time, it was like cartooning in real time. So when
Mhm.
we do, like, I'd go, hey, thank you very much. And I'd have to program into the computer to make her lip go up. And, we have a Waldo. So that was all the lip sync and how she moves and everything. And her eye blinks, her facial expressions were on a little joystick and on pedals. And then Alan Trotman was Ginger's body. I'm not Ginger, excuse me, Bubbles' body. So he was doing the fish and I was doing all the facial expressions.
And
Mhm.
I also played Flo, the sea turtle on that. So I was the sea turtle. And then I also played Dunk's girlfriend, which was cool. So I played another character for that and got to program all the things. And so I was most excited the, for an Annie Award for voiceover. I was nominated for an Annie for Bubbles, but I actually animated the character. So it wasn't like I was just doing voiceover, actually animated the character. So
Mhm.
that was a huge honor, because I was like, oh my gosh, I actually animated this, so the answer is yes. The reason I got those is because of my connection to Johnny. I'm
Cool.
not gonna lie, I still had to audition, I still had to win
Right.
people over, and but we just have really good chemistry together.
That's great. All right, so let's wrap it up with some fan questions.
Wow.
So first up, a couple here from Samuel Warwick. Samuel also sent in some questions for Ricky Boyd, so I can tell he's a big Animal Jam fan.
Uh-huh.
First one from him is, what episode of Animal Jam did you enjoy working on the most?
Ooh, that's tough because I loved them all. I love them all. I just love the music in that show. It was so gorgeous. I really like the rain episode. I loved singing Bounce. Um, I can't, I really can't. I think of them in terms of songs, but I can't pick one. I love them all.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you record songs for the show at Disney MGM Studios?
No, we did all the songs in Los Angeles before we
Okay.
went out.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do you think Animal Jam should be on some streaming network?
Yes,
Me too. I mean,
I do. I don't know why it isn't.
I agree.
I mean, wouldn't it be on Animal Planet, right? Isn't that where it was?
Maybe Ricky remembers it being on Animal Planet. I remember it being on TLC because they had
I
a
don't,
kids block when I was younger.
yeah, I don't know. We should start a whisper campaign.
Good idea.
Yeah. Same with
Last,
Sprites. I don't know why it's not on Disney Plus.
hmm. Can you do the Edie voice?
Yeah, I think she's it's been so long. Waffle, I think she's more like a heightened sense of me, just being a little bit young and, a monkey named Nat taking a walk. Yeah, sure. Waffle. Yeah, so where's Abby? And Wally's down here. Like a lot of that stuff lives in this register of mine. And then if I go to the, well, I also do a voice match for someone, but I will not say more.
Okay, I'll remember
But
that.
so I think she's was more just like really cool and stuff up here, really nice, and I from what I remember.
Okay. Tori Benson is asking, what was your favorite main style for Edie?
Oh, well, I liked her curly dread. I loved her dreads, but I liked when they were curly. But remember when she had a mohawk when she was doing like she was playing guitar and stuff?
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, the mohawk was pretty cool. I remember when I first saw it, but I liked her like her dreads were always fun, but I like the curly ones too. Curly,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Last one here comes from someone named Elias, and Elias is asking, do you still have the Edie puppet?
Boy, you have a lot of Animal Jam. Is it because it played a lot in Canada?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it played a lot in Canada. I mean, I watched it as a kid.
Yeah. Okay, so no, I don't have that puppet. So here's something interesting. Ricky's puppet is in Puppet Up. They use
Right.
that.
I saw it in the
And
Happy
they
Time
also
Murders.
use John Kennedy was the baby water buffalo. They use that in Puppet Up. I think they even use Andy Stone's cougar puppet. I saw in Puppet Up one time on the rack. The koala is in Puppet Up.
Mm,
The only puppet that they don't use in Puppet Up is Edie,
mm.
which is nice because I think they don't want her to swear or say anything. But so I didn't. So I don't have it. But she's there. She's ready to play at any time.
Nice. Well, that wraps up everything. Is there anything more you'd like to say?
I just want to say thank you for having me and thank you for letting us tell our stories. I think I probably am long-winded. So if I took you on a journey you hadn't expected, um, and just thank you for doing what you do, James. And thank you for sharing the grumpy stories with me.
I've got so many.
I love it. You know, my grandparents live with us. I miss them. I miss my mom. You know, I think it's fun that we always talk about the people that we love in our life. So I kind of think you should maybe make a puppet of Grumpy.
That would be hilarious.
A character of him. But no, just a great thank you. And my heart goes out to everybody. And thanks for doing this. When did you just decide, like, this is what I want to do? This is so perfect for you.
What, the podcast?
Yeah.
I've been doing online classes a few times a week, and that's, you know, and so there's time to do like schoolwork, and then like I've always been into retro TV, film, stuff like that. Like I love watching shows and movies from when I was a kid and listening to, as you can see by my shirt, like Backstreet Boys, and 98 Degrees, Britney Spears, and Sync. And
I know, which means you're going to have to go back and look at the Mickey Mouse Club.
I've seen it.
Now that you know that I was Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake's mom in a liquid meat commercial. I mean, you know what else I was in?
What?
Mary Kate and Ashley in SeaWorld.
That's right. Yes, I saw that.
Mrs. Torres. You know what else? I was in an episode of The Martin Show. I played a maid that walked in and walked out.
Martin Lawrence?
A really old maid character that walked in and walked out. That was every once in a while I'll get a residual check for like 3 cents for doing that. I just think that was crazy.
But yeah, one night I was just randomly watching Space Jam. I love that movie. And so I emailed Bob Bergen and I said, "Hey Bob, I want to start this podcast web show kind of thing on YouTube where I talk about retro programming with the people who worked on them. Do you want to be on it?" So he was the first to say yes, and I think I kept inviting people. Kevin Carlson was shortly after.
Kevin's great. I love Kevin.
He was one of the first.
Do you talk about Pee-wee's Playhouse and Timmy the Tooth and
mostly Timmy the Tooth? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how that all started, and now it's gone from 1 to this is episode number 26.
Wow. You have more podcast episodes than Lolly has. I think, no, we have 26. Lolly's Radio Playdate.
Oh, wow.
Lolly has her own podcast. She has a newsletter. She has a YouTube channel and Instagram. She's more popular than I am.
Nice. Well, I'll put links in the description for Lolly's social media page if anyone wants to go follow them.
Thank you. That would be super great. We'd love that.
And for the listeners, I just want to remind you guys of a little something. If you're following the Nostalgia Talk Facebook page, again, link in the description. Don't forget, Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic Canadian time, or whatever time that is where you are, I am going live for some nostalgia trivia, and I'm very excited about that.
Cool. Let me see, what am I doing on Tuesday night? I don't know. I'll try to make it.
Okay, I'll send you the link.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And next week on Nostalgia Talk is a very exciting show. I am going to be chatting with 5 of the cast members from the TV series Lazy Town.
Oh, is Amy Garcia one?
Yes.
She's like my best sister friend buddy pal.
Well,
I love her. Amy and I were on Splash and Bubbles together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we lived together when we were on Splash and Bubbles.
Wow. I'm going to be chatting
She is my
with
sister friend.
I'll tell her you said hi. I'm going to be chatting with Chloe Lang, Jody Eichelberger. I hope I said that right.
Jody's a nice, wonderful person. I know him as well.
Amy Garcia, David Matthew Feldman, and Julie Westwood. And that's all going to be next Saturday. So if you guys have any questions for the cast of Lazy Town, send them along. Let me know. And I'll see you next week. Peace. And I'll see you Tuesday night as well.
Bye, everyone.